Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. Tom Dutta, like Butta here. Pretty excited because we're going to have a fella on in a minute. He's in the green room from a far, far away land. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you've seen the show notes, you'll know that it's the Netherlands. But he's patiently waiting there. So I'm going to just make a couple announcements to get started. Coming up on the Quiet Warrior Show, we're excited. In fact, the show is booked out right through October. Can you believe it? I must be doing something right. And July 30th, coming up next week, Patricia Chadwick. She'll be talking about her new book called The Witch of Wall Street. This woman was a high-powered figure from Wall Street. Yeah, I think you can like her. Any Chosen fans out there? I'm a Catholic, baptized Catholic. Christianity's part of my life. If you watch The Chosen, which is basically films they're making about the life of Jesus Christ, they're in season 5. It's millions to make it. We have on Stan Jantz, the CEO of Come and See. Come and See is a not-for-profit fundraising arm for The Chosen. Now, this guy's got a story, but it'd be very interesting to hear about that for sure. August 13th, Rizwan Abbas. He's an archaeologist. I did not know this story. You may not know it either, but a long, long time ago, there was an indentured slavery system where they brought 60,500 or so people from India to Fiji, and they tricked them. They put them in coolie huts. They put them to work on plantations. They abused them. It was just incredible. And I'm trying to find out in my lineage if my Fijian parents with my Indian grandparents were connected to that. So Rizwan is coming on. He's the founder of a not-for-profit, the Gurmatia Society. Can't wait for that one. August 20th, Brad Schaefer. I don't know why we're getting all these Wall Street guys. He's a floor trader, but knows a lot about what happens in that industry and the culture. He's also a writer and an actor. September 17th, this one is really special for me. My wife and I met Chef Michel in the kitchen of his restaurant. Le Crocodile is a famous French restaurant. It's world-renowned. We had a lot of actors that come to town, go there. This chef, he started that restaurant, and over a lifetime, he took that to where it is. He just retired, and Chef Rob Feeney, who, if you know Food Network and you follow that industry, he's a big guy in the industry. He bought the restaurant. So I thought, hey, let's get Michelle on to talk about how do you get into cooking and what do you learn along the way. Can't wait to have him on. And September 24th and October 1st, we're doing two Dr. Amelia Kelly and Gina Cavalier. And these are deep topics. The book they've written is called Surviving Suicidal Ideation. Oh my gosh, imagine that. Now, many of you know I had a concussion in 2018, but I had my first experience with suicidal ideation. It ain't fun, especially if you don't know what's happening. Can't wait for that one. September 18th, Mike Harcourt, the former mayor of Vancouver, former premier of British Columbia. He'll be on. His story is amazing. I'm reading his book right now called Plan B. If you remember the history for local British Columbians, he was on a deck at his cottage with 2 pails of water to fill his hot tub. The water shifted. He fell off the deck 6 stories down a cliff. He didn't have a railing, face plant right in the ocean. They thought they'd lost him. He's come back, and wait till you hear his story about what he's doing with policy and volunteering in the world, focused on things like disability. So there you have it, everybody, taking a tour right through to October. Let me ask you this. Do you have any grandchildren, any children in your life? And in a tough world, wouldn't it be cool to have something you can bring a little sunshine into their life? I think so. Take a look at this. All right, a little fun there, and there it is. I'm holding up my third book, just dropped May this year. It is a coloring book. It's been a dream. It's based on some of the research out of my doctoral degree that I'm doing right now. It's about bringing children together with the parent in a different way, the Talanoa way, which is a Pacific Islander word about storytelling and coloring. So check it out. It's on Amazon. Grab a copy, and I hope you have some great experiences there with your loved ones. Well, now that I've rambled for a few minutes, we'll clean this up when we produce the show, take that part out of it. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our guest that's coming on. His name is Paul Ter Wal. He told me that you have to roll your tongue, or he rolls his tongue when he pronounces it. I can't do that. He can do it for us. He is a global engagement explorer, a speaker, consultant, and an author. His bio is pretty impressive. He's employability expert and workplace architect. So what does that mean? I'm sure we'll get into that. 25 years he's been in the speaking, consulting, and training business for executives, human beings, directors, and employees. Hopefully all those other people are human beings as well. Happiness makes money. That's something that he shared with me, and I'm really interested in hearing more about that. He's a former lawyer, works on both sides, the employee and the employer side, to create better leadership, work happiness, and profitability. When employees are engaged, he says they're passionate, creative, and entrepreneurial, and their enthusiasm fuels growth. Employees are emotionally connected to the mission and purpose of their work. This makes sales marketing for organizations much easier. So let's see what he has to say about joy, passion, and in particular with COVID and a post-COVID workforce. I'm very interested in how do you get engagement up that way. His law career was a social benefits organization, and then an assistant director of a public health insurance company. And then consulting career was at Capgemini in the field of social security and labor law. Now he has his own practice. He's been doing that for quite some time. He just told me that he's traveled many, many miles today. He's a recognized speaker by the Professional Speakers Association in Australia, as well as a fellow by the Professional Speaker Association in the UK and Ireland. There's a lot more to Paul Ter Wal, but you know what? Let's just bring him on so we can say hello. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Hi, Tom. Good to be here.
Great to be here, too. Now, we just had some time with you, and I love that accent. I'm going to throw something on the screen here and get you to read out the first line. Read it out loud.
Welkom bij onze podcast. Het is geweldig om je hier te hebben.
Okay. I hope I got the translation right. So everyone, this translates to welcome to our podcast. It's great to have you here. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to add one more thing to the screen now. Everybody, we're live streaming, so you can chat with us. Put a question in the chat field. This will be produced as a podcast and YouTube premiere after the show. But our guest is with us from a far, far away land. So Paul, let's humanize you, get to know you a bit. You're in the Netherlands. I'm here in British Columbia. Just talk about the map and tell us a few things about your beautiful country.
Well, it looks a little bit strange to me now. We have one country in Europe, and the Netherlands has 3 countries in the Caribbean. So the Kingdom of the Netherlands consists of 4 different countries.
Wow.
And most of the time, we only talk about that part that is between Germany and France. But we have some islands close to Venezuela and Suriname, and that are 3 islands that are different countries than the Netherlands. So, and we have some specific cities there as well. So 6 of the islands in the Caribbean are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Not many people will know it.
That's fascinating. I'm going to remove that off the screen there. By the way, everybody, that map wasn't exactly accurate, but I just wanted to put up something evocative. Paul, I don't know how you feel about AI, but I use AI just to generate images, and I said, hey, I've got this guy on from the Netherlands. I'm here in British Columbia. I want to be evocative about the location, and that's what they produced.
Yeah, lovely.
We'll send it to you for a souvenir. Let's start off by just talking a bit about a question here that came out of your bio. I'm going to read it out loud and have you just start the conversation. This is a statistic. According to Gallup Engagement Index, a staggering 87% of employees worldwide are not engaged at work. The world has a crisis of engagement with serious and potentially long-lasting repercussions for organizations. Tell us about that and the origin behind that statistic.
Yeah. Well, if you look at engagement, some call it happiness or whatever, but for me, engagement is if you go to work, you start with a lot of energy because you love working, you
Yeah.
love your job. If you are engaged, you will leave home with even more energy because you have a private life where you need to use all the energy you get from your work. And that's what we're seeing over the last 20, 30 years, that engagement is going down and down and down. And not only because of Corona and COVID, but it has to do with our way of treating human beings in our organizations. By the way, the United States of America has 35% engaged people, but they also have 25% fully disengaged people. So it's always about the connection between how engaged am I or how disengaged am I. And in the US, it's quite good. If you look in Canada, but in Europe as well, we have 13, 14% engaged people and 15, 16% fully disengaged people. And that means that if we are a car, we are not moving ahead.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. I just doing the math in my head. So this is storytelling, and I know that we asked you on the screen, everyone. There's a word underneath Paul's name, Stentor, and so yeah, I think you told me that's storyteller. So we're telling stories here. So we're going to be riffing back and forth. I really honor
Yeah.
Paul for allowing me to do that. When you said 35 and 25, my analytical brain put them together and said, what's the other 40% doing? Or are they just kind of looking around like in a culture change and saying, okay, let's wait and see? Or there's something else about that?
You are describing it right on because the point is a lot of people are what we call satisfied. They go to their work in time, they leave in time, they get their money on time, and they enjoy their life outside of business. And that's good for a lot of jobs. It's okay. You can't ask everybody to be fully engaged,
Yeah.
but it should be 1 on 1.5. So you should have 50% more fully engaged people than disengaged people because the disengaged people are ruining your business by purpose.
Very interesting. And it'd be interesting to have a correlation with other data about engagement, no pun intended, in relationships, particularly how, I mean, there might be a crossover about how engaged you are at home, probably different relational skills. What you're having me think about right now, and the audience I'm sure might get this, is we're hearing Paul here, and he's talking about, I think you said outside of work, if you're happy and you're doing things that bring you to work, where you're passionate about your work, there's a connection, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Well, that takes us into the first big segment of the show, which is called Plato's Garden. So I'll explain what that is in a minute, but are you ready to join me in Plato's Garden?
Absolutely.
Okay. Everybody going to set this up in the 3, 2, 1 way, because again, I'll be editing this together, almost like we're making an indie feature film here for Paul. So just stand by, Paul. 3, 2, 1. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be in Plato's garden, everybody? Welcome to Plato's garden. Okay, little sizzle video to get your blood pumping. And so let me put a PowerPoint slide on the screen here. For your benefit, let me explain Plato's Garden to you and the audience. You may know some of this. Everybody, what we're looking at here is Plato's Garden. There's an image. Plato was an Athenian philosopher during the classical period in ancient Greece, founder of the Platonist school of thought and academy. Academy's from the word academia. Isn't that kind of cool? This was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. And so the influences of context is what we're going to talk about with Paul. Now, let me set this up for you, Paul. There were 3 words, and I sent Paul these words ahead of time, asking him an evocative question, about, why are you a fit for the show? The first word is macro. So, Paul, we're going to get into just conversations about what was happening in the world around you as you really started creating what I call your public work. So, yeah, you were a lawyer and you were a consultant, but then you started this agency. What was going on in the macro world? Meso is what was happening in your sector, your industry. And micro, and this is the one I love to dig deep into, what was happening in your personal life, you, that influenced this public work. Now, before I give it back to you and we'll start the conversation, one of the things we're talking about here is called critical thinking. And criticality or critical thinking, everyone, is where we connect all those dots together. So Paul was brilliant. Paul, when I heard you talk about being engaged at work, it's almost like you set this up for me, but then you talk about outside of work, there's something going on. Well, that's macro, meso, and micro at play.
Yep.
So let's go back and take us into your story. I know that you were born in a hardworking family with 8 children. You're number 5. Start there and just open up that story.
Yeah, I must say I'm born in 1958, and a lot of people will know that it is the beginning of the 60s. And to be honest, I missed it all. I was 12 when we ended the 70s, and I lived in a quite a big city, but we could still play on the streets, and that's what we did. We didn't have television for many years. We had one telephone, which was the business telephone for my father. So nobody used a telephone. We didn't watch TV, so we were playing outside on the streets. And I must say, even though we had 8 children, we were quite poor. To be honest, if I look backwards, we lived in a small house, not much money. My father was self-employed, furnishing houses, 2 employees, working terribly hard. So my father was never there. My mother was loving, but she couldn't handle a business and 8 children. So you can imagine the fights that were going on in our family. Still, looking back, I had an amazing first 12, 15 years.
Yeah, I'd like to just throw that picture back up on the screen. And everybody, I just put a chat note. If you're on the stream, put a comment, ask a question, chat with us. We're in Plato's Garden getting to know our guest, Paul Ter Wal. And Paul, I put the map back up. You're in Netherlands, and I'm kind of picturing what you said as a young boy in the Netherlands there. No TV, one phone. We used to call that a party line here. Remember the banana-covered phone with the twisted copper wire. Crazy times. But you had me thinking about that, man, today, what do we do today? We give our children an iPad or a video game, or we glue them to the TV.
Yeah.
I want to honor you for something you said. And from the notes that you sent me, you said that you were number 5 in the family, and then your dad, I think, was a home furniture. Talk about how those young experiences, did it define you or shape you? And in what ways? And particularly, we love our parents. We're not perfect. I'm a parent. And there's some things our parents do that pass on to us that are good, and some things that challenge us. Take us into that conversation.
Yeah, I must say, I almost looked the same as my father when he was about my age. So, and I have exactly the same voice. So sometimes I'm reminded by him when I look in a mirror and I see my father. It's silly. I must say he was a Christian. He was very active in church, in church life. So was I for many years. I think the most important part, which I learned from my father, is work hard, work from your core values. So know what your core values are. And to be honest, it's the topic I talk about today in business. If you know who you are, what your non-negotiables are, what your core values are as a human being, you can treat others the way you want to be treated. So that's what I learned. And if you have a family of 8, you have hierarchy, you have rules, you have limits. I like them. My father was working 60, maybe 80 hours a week. But
Wow.
in summer holiday, he took off 3 weeks and we went on holiday with a caravan, with a tent, and he was there for us. Every Sunday, he was there for us. So I learned loyalty and being authentic and being your own standard because he needed to earn money to keep 10 mouths filled.
Yeah.
And hard work, especially in the 60s, 70s, that's different than nowadays. I know that I came home with my first sheet for my income when I was 21 years old. And my father looked at my net income per month and he said, I've never earned that in my life, that amount
Wow.
of money. So I
Do
was
you
starting,
remember how much that was?
yeah, that was 3,195 guilders, which would be now about $1,800 US dollars.
That's
So
remarkable.
I was wealthy. Well, I remember it because I gave it to him and it was my first job. I had no clue. And that man told me, well, this is more than I ever earned in my life. And I was really surprised because 10 children and then, or 8 children and 2 mom and dad, and then having less than as I started as a lawyer. It was so an open mind. It blew me. Whoa, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Still, he was a happy man. He was always there. He tried to support my mother. Like I said, she had tough times. They were in the war, so they experienced a lot of bad stuff as well. My father had to work in Germany to produce V1s, so he didn't have a playful youth like I had. They had to work hard to stay alive. Still, what they did for us is amazing. And I know some of my brothers and sisters have a different opinion.
Yeah.
Um, for me, they were heroes.
Let me just pause you there, catch your breath. Everybody, we're here with Ter Wal. It's a great story. You're talking about your parents there, and I like how you're honoring them. Talking about your dad, I just wrote some notes here on my paper that evoke some thought. Again, we're in Plato's Garden here, everyone, with Paul. That the this thing about values. You learned something about your dad's values. I'm blown away at age 21. So that's when you started being a lawyer, correct?
I started at the age of 21.
Wow, that's young, and interesting. So you've been working hard since a young age, and when your dad saw that paycheck, he was proud of you, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You see, that's a little bit different story than I grew up with because I was working from the age of 12 at a paper route. My first management job in banking was 21. It's funny how our stories connect so much. I was a CEO
Yeah.
at 31. But my dad was a drinker, and he used to get mad at me because I was earning income. Now I love my dad. He passed away, so all this I figured out later in life. Paul was strength he gave me, but my dad was kind of messed up in his thinking. So he would say things like, "Tommy's selfish," because I wouldn't give him all my money. I would save some, but it was a very different thing. So it took me a while, and I learned later in life, doing some of my own work on understanding that, Paul, that in life you develop either a good or a bad relationship with money. And
Yeah.
I've coached some guys in my executive coaching practice who bankrupt their companies because they've got this thread back where money's bad, money's evil. So you're really you're helping us understand how you evolved. Talk about your mom. Was she the nurturer? Was like what did she? How did she shape you? Just quickly.
I think that she made clear that there are always limits in what you can handle.
Yeah.
And that's what you see later on. She was overwhelmed by all the activities. We had the business at home in our garden. So everybody who came to our house had to go through our house into the garden where we had a small shed where my father was working. So our house was always crowded and it overwhelmed my mother.
Yeah.
And she wasn't always friendly, but still, she learned me that everybody has their limits and that we need to honor their limits.
Yeah, very interesting. I've put back on the screen here for those who are watching the words macro, meso, micro. So we're connecting the dots between what was going on in those areas in Paul's lifeline. Paul, talk about one thing in terms of the macro. I asked you what was going on in the world at the time you transformed your work. So when you went in create your own agency, you might want to bridge that a bit, because I know you did some consulting with Capgemini, but you wrote something here to me. Let me remove that off the screen for a moment. You wrote, around the year 2000, the world changed mostly because of 9/11. Innocence left us. We became more aware of the threats and against our lives. So your parents shaped you. You just talked about learning values and how you saw them navigate a very hard life. Now talk about that macro part.
Yeah, well, I was an employee for many years, from 81 till about 1995. And then I was asked by a big government agency to start a consulting firm myself. They didn't want to hire the big companies like Capgemini, that kind of stuff. And they said, "Can you work for us?" And the first 5 years, it was easy. I earned my money. It was an easy life. And then 9/11 came, and I traveled to the US many years. And 9/11 struck not only me, but I think everybody in the world, because we thought that wars were happening somewhere else in the world
Yeah.
and not in our world. And suddenly we saw that by using a plane, you could create a war inside a peaceful country. I think that shocked everybody, also the people in the Netherlands. I know exactly where I was when the first plane hit one of the towers. I know it exactly.
Where were you?
I was working for the government. I was working in The Hague, close to the Peace Palace. And that's funny as well if you see the connection. And we were doing consulting work for social affairs. And somebody said, "Hey, something is happening in New York." So they were watching the news. And everybody stopped working and we went to see the news. And we stayed there till after the second plane hit the tower. And then the director of the organization said, "Well, let's all go home. We we need to see what's happening. Just leave the office, take the day off, and do what you need to do." And I think that was very impressive because then you see what's happening.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody, where were you when 9/11 happened? I remember exactly where I was. I remember I was in the banking industry at the time as a senior leader. My mom would come over early in the morning to look after my young daughter, Kalinda, and my wife was a bank manager. So, Paul, we both worked in these professional careers. I remember getting up that morning, had known nothing about what had happened, but my mom was standing with the TV on in our family room, and one of the towers was smoke. And I just remember as it broke, I stared at that thing. When I went to work that morning, we were in what's called a corporate office, and up 6 flights of stairs, there was a landing area with a 60-inch TV. All the employees would come up that escalator, and it was just packed, 100 people, but you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, Paul, because this is a thing that I like neuroscience and what happens in the brain. How come we can remember that? Everybody, just a little bit of my passion for neuroscience. Is when you attach emotions to something, it stores in the amygdala. It's the deep emotional center. And when it's something like a story, we can remember like it happened yesterday. You yourself are a storyteller. So it's fascinating. I want to go back to the macro, meso, micro. And when I look at meso, what was going on in the sector at the time of transformation in your work? Before you answer that, So here I see you as somebody who was a lawyer, and that's an interesting question for me too, because how do you go in and coach and teach and mentor people on engagement? Sometimes there's stigmas attached to our backgrounds. So how did you appear to be like others? But anyway, just before I give it back to you, there you are as a lawyer, you become a consultant, then you develop your own practice. Just talk about that whole thing. What was going on in the world for you to do that besides 9/11?
Yeah, I think what I saw in my legal practice is that we take care of people when something bad happens to them.
I see.
There is a crime made, they get unemployed, they get disabled, whatever. And I was on that, I call it the backside. Something happens, you are not able to do your job anymore. And then I came in to support you. And I thought, why are we investing so much money in curation, in making people better instead of amplification, which is at the front end? How can I support you to have a better life, to take care of yourself, to be responsible, to be the owner of your destiny? So I changed from what I call the backside to the front side. And that wasn't overnight. I think it was in a period of 4 or 5 years that I thought, why are we spending so much money in hospitals, healthcare, social security, and not making people aware that they are responsible for their own life and that we can support them? And that's what happened around 2000 because we had so many disabled people in the Netherlands. We have about 8 million people working, and 1 million of them were disabled. They got social security. And I
Wow.
thought that's
That
that's that's
I just
way too many.
I just have to jump in. I mean, that you heard me go, wow, that just caught me. 1 million out of 8 million. Just tell us more about that.
We have in the Netherlands one of the best social security systems in the world. I traveled all over the world and there is no system like it. But that means also that it makes it easier for you to get unemployed, to call in sick, because you know that your employer will pay your income.
I see.
So many people had something, had a mental issue, had a physical issue, and stayed at home for 1 or 2 years. In the Netherlands, we pay the first year of your illness 100% of your income, the second year 70%. And you see, it makes life easier because you're not losing money, you're not dependent on somebody else. I'm not saying that it's all fraud, but it makes life easier that if you have a cold and you don't want to go to work, you can call in sick and say, I'm staying at home for a couple of days. And we had company doctors and all that, but it was made too easy. And we saw a lot of people who could do other jobs who were still 100% called disabled. And that changed after those years. But we had a prime minister who said the Netherlands is ill.
Wow. This is a remarkable, everybody. Paul Ter Wal here. I'm hearing some things that's making my brain go on journeys. For example, I remembered when you said about the benefits, making it easier to not go to work. Remember, I did a cruise over with my wife to Europe, and we did Greece. And I remember they talked about that people there, it was more incentive. This is going back years, not to work than to work. I couldn't compute that. And then I have a lot of American friends, business colleagues as well, who I've had on my show, who they're still fighting in some companies for 2 weeks vacation. It's funny, Paul, because when I was at my executive career, CEO was the last senior role. The board of directors for the company I was with, I ran a financial service company here in Canada. We outsourced to HR in Canada, but their HR department would argue with me because we wanted starting vacation to be 3 weeks, and they would say things like, "What's with you Canadians?" But this is all about, I think, culture too, right? So let me ask you this question, and it relates now. So still in Plato's Garden, we're connecting all the dots here. What are the most effective strategies you found to increase employee engagement, especially in this diverse global workforce. What are you teaching people?
Well, to be honest, I became an engagement explorer. I'm not an expert because I see so many new things every time I travel around.
Mm,
But to be honest, we are all human beings. And of course, we have culture that is surrounding us. But if you go through culture into the hearts of human beings, we all want the same. We want a happy life. We want to be in good health. We want to have children. We have something that is common all over the world. And what I saw is that we need to focus on the ABCP. A is for autonomy. Everybody, every human being needs some sort of autonomy. That you are a professional, you are well equipped, you know as professional what to do. So give people some freedom to make choices in their life. Number two is belonging. As human beings, we are social animals. We need to be part of a tribe.
yeah,
And we need to have the right competences. And what we saw overall is purpose in life. People need to know what's in it for me. Why am I doing what I do? And that's what I call the core values or non-negotiables. You need to have that feeling that you are part of a bigger something, like Christians have. All the religions have that's what they have in common. We are looking for something bigger than ourselves. And that's the purpose in life. And if we can focus on that A, B, C, and purpose, people will become more and more engaged. They will take care of themselves. They want to be happy. They want to be self-fulfilling. And we even have an IT company now in the Netherlands. We used to work 5 days a week. And I said used because that company decided that they need 4 days of 8 hours, still earning the income of 5 days. And they found out that people are much more productive in
yes.
4 days than in 5 days.
Interesting to see a case study on implementing something like that. Paul, what was the C again in the ABCP? What was that?
The C is competencies, the B is belonging.
Yeah.
So we need to train people because the world is changing. You mentioned already AI. I'm working with compassionate AI that is even learning when you're talking with the AI machine, which is on my phone, it creates new answers. So
That's right.
it's adapting. And we can help it for coaching. We can help it to give mental treatment to people because it's not biased, the computer, and it gives you the answer that they find somewhere. So I think that instead of being afraid of new technology, we should use it to have a better society. And that's
Yeah.
for me the competencies that you focus on. How can we train people to get a better professional?
Interesting. I embrace AI. It's interesting because not everybody does. And here's the thing that frustrates me. A little story actually from me, Paul, to you, the master storyteller, that my father, you and I talked before we came on, passed away in 2018, unexpectedly, heart attack. I miss Dad. When I was a kid, I remember, and my dad was only at home till I was 12 because our family sort of just broke apart through his addiction. But my dad was talking about AI back then, and he worked for British Columbia Institute of Technology. He was a teacher and a trainer. Prior to that, he was a journeyman apprentice. Sounds a lot like your father. He was a hard worker, many hours.
Yeah.
But I remember he was all excited and talking about this AI thing that he was involved in a discussion group. I could not understand it. And man, today I embrace it, and it reminds me of when I was a bank teller in the banking industry. I remember, Paul, guys would come in or gals over the counter, And then the ATM came in, and we had to tell people what that was. Oh my God, the biggest uproar. Oh, it's going to take our jobs. Well, guess what? Transformation happens. I remember that in the telecom industry when we were just, it's funny you were talking about having one phone. Then there's data and internet and mobile phones. And yet when change comes, it's like a paradigm shift. Sometimes we're afraid of it. So I really appreciated what you said. I had a note here related to your career. Forgot to throw this out. You said big money, no good feeling, dissatisfied. Oops, I think we might have just lost Paul on the feed there. So I'm going to just keep talking a little bit. He and I have talked about if we have that happen, what he's going to do. Let me just add him to the, he's trying to get back in. Everybody, this thing about, when Paul was talking about starting his own practice and business and working for someone else, and you want this autonomy or freedom, but I'm kind of curious to get you thinking about, has anybody out there watching or listening to us ever started their own practice after being an employee? Now, there's some major shifts that you have to make. One is there's no stability in paycheck. Number two is there's a lot of procrastination in having to get up, go to work when you're self-employed. And the one that I learned, especially when I went from being a paid executive leader to someone who runs their own practice, is there's no straight line up for compensation, right? We don't get paid, and you got to eat what you kill, they say. So you have to go out. So think about that. Think about how you hear not everybody is engaged, and they don't like what they're doing. Paul, I know that you can hear me, but we lost your picture on the feed. Maybe you can drop out and come back in again. But if you don't like what you're doing in your work, you hate your work, and we're hearing Paul talks to us about engagement. What is it you're running away from that makes you not want to be working in a job for someone else, but you think it's on the other side of the fence, you'll be a lot happier? Then you get to that other side, and I'm not saying that all self-employed people or people who have created their own agencies don't have a ball and enjoy what they're doing. But what is it that you find on the other side of that? I'd like people to comment or, certainly join me on other shows and tell me, what is it you found there that you like? Here's the things that I've found that I like about having my own agency. And I've been building my own practice, everyone, since 2017. Prior to that, 30 years of being a paid executive. I like the autonomy. I absolutely like it. I like the variety that you can create something, or you can go out and buy some business and then run it. If you can apply skills, competencies maybe you have that while you're working in a public company or with somebody else, you can't apply that. I like how you can wear all the different hats. You can be chief cook, bottle washer, keep the lights on, dealing with sales and marketing, the operational side, business development. I really like that. However, the limitations that come, and you find this right away, is you don't have a paycheck being deposited in your account every 2 weeks. There is that procrastination to get up and keep pushing forward. And you take on a lot of risk. And what do I mean by that? Well, if there's a downturn in the business, sometimes that affects your livelihood or it can affect your family. So very interesting when we talk about employee engagement, and we'll just add Paul back there. Good to have you back. We'll clean all that up, Paul. But if you heard me rambling, I was really talking about the difference between working for yourself and then becoming self-employed, and how what are you running from when you're working for the man, I guess, and what is it you think you'll find over here? And before you dropped off there, I read to you the comment you made about big money, no good feeling, dissatisfied. Just fill in the blanks. What do you mean by that in your story?
When I started to work for myself, I was asked by a big national organization, and they guaranteed me some money. And I must say, I was very happy because, like you said, you don't get a paycheck anymore. So you need to earn your money every month, and I still do. If I don't work, there is no income. On the other hand, it gave me a lot of satisfaction to be responsible, to do my job, to be on my own. And I grew to 15, 20 employees in a couple of years' time. But for me, it was more important that I was responsible for my own work, for my own acting. And that's what was for me the most important part. Of course, I can tell you my wife had sometimes a different opinion, and she still has. Life can be hard as you are self-employed, but it gave me that autonomy
Yeah.
that I wanted. It gave me awareness that it's all about you and not about being depending on others.
No, thank you for that comparison. It'd be really cool to actually one-to-one with people about that question, and then write a book about it. I might actually put that in my list of things to do one day. What is it you're running from, and what did you find? And you'll find those answers. They're very different. Put this back on the screen here as a chat comment, everyone. We're with Paul Ter Wal. ABCP is his philosophy: autonomy, belonging, competencies, and purpose. Want to talk about that word purpose for a minute. Sometimes it's overplayed. Sometimes it means different things. And tie it back to employee engagement. One of the things I love what you said, Paul, is that employee engagement, I use my words here, you show up around other people feeling happy, feeling motivated, and being a good person. Tell me what you think about this, but I don't think people leave companies because of the work they do. I think they leave it because they don't like somebody, or the person they work for. They just and leaders have trouble with blind spots, their backstories connected, of communicating, relating to people. So 2 questions. What would you advise or say to somebody who just is not a likable person or has trouble communicating with others, and yet they are responsible for improving the engagement of those employees? Number 2, this is maybe a little bit provocative. I don't believe that passion comes from, and joy comes from, something external. I believe it comes from inside us. And so I really do believe from experience that you can go and work anywhere. And as long as you have people that, like Paul, I like you, I connect to you, you feel comfortable with, I can bring my joy and passion that I find somewhere else. I can bring that with me into the workplace. So I don't really care if I'm not like blown away by putting lids on toothpaste or whatever I'm doing. Just talk about that.
Well, to be honest, there is done a lot of research on happiness. And one of the most famous research was on identical twins who were separated over years. More than 40,000 people were searched worldwide. And the outcome is that your happiness depends for 40% on your DNA. So that's what you get from your mom and dad. And the other 60% is how you respond to what's happening in your life. So it's not about what happens in your life that determines whether you're happy or not. It's the way you make the choice in responding to what's happening in your world. So making your own choices creates happiness. So it comes from inside. And making choices has to do with who you are, what you stand for. And like you said, 70% of the people are leaving a company not because they can earn more money or they have a better job, but they don't like management. And that's worldwide exactly the same, everywhere.
Everybody, a teaching moment here. You come back and just watch this over and over. I'll just play it back. Tell me if I got it wrong. This phrase, how you respond to what's happening around you, is really what creates that experience. That is so powerful, Paul, because the work I've done since my brain injury, I've recovered from a fall on my head on a bathtub. Long story, long ago. I had to go into a brain clinic for 22 weeks to retrain parts of my brain. And I learned a lot more also about and I just want to digress on this, about the way my childhood shaped me. And so I found some scientific articles on the word maltreatment. And I'm just going to riff here and take you on a journey that ties back, I think, to what you said. Now, you said how you respond to what's happening in your externally, how you respond to that, can be responsible for creating that joy, happiness, right? That's what you said.
Yep.
Okay. So here's the interesting thing. when you're a child growing up, and when I say child, early years, and you experience maltreatment, maltreatment can come in different forms, right, Paul? It can be experiencing stress around you, like your parents arguing all the time, life's tough. It can be neglect, where daddy's going to work and you're saying, Daddy, Daddy. He doesn't know it, but he's ignoring you. So you're not good enough. Or it can be, in my case, physical, mental abuse from an addicted parent or an alcoholic. Well, the stress management systems in the brain, actually MRIs have shown that the brains don't develop effectively for children who go through that consistently. So now you have, just, if you can stay with me here, you have guys like me who went into leadership and start leading people, but what we see on the outside world is a different picture from our brain's inner world than what's happening. So, for example, I'll finish with this, give it back to you to talk about what I said. I used to sit in a room in my early career, just as I got into the C level, and see people raising their voices, see all these provocative conversations, and I would get this emotional knot in my gut. What was really happening was almost like PTSD. My brain was seeing danger where I wasn't processing it. So this goes back to your brilliant comment, how you respond to what's happening. And I believe that there's a lot of leaders who are in leadership roles who are wired where they can't manage what's happening around them. So bringing it back full circle, comment on any of that if you can, but going back to what are some of the strategies to teach leaders to improve employee engagement?
Yeah, well, first I want to make a remark. I have my book here, and I quote Viktor Frankl. Maybe you know him.
Hold that. Let's give you a plug. Hold that book up on the screen and read out the title.
It's Profitability, but then in Dutch.
It's in okay. I'll just hold it up one more time. I'm going to do something fun here. And here we are with Paul with profitability petita.
It's just profitability.
I love it.
Yeah,
did you register that word? I saw an R on there.
Yeah,
good for you.
Profit is a normal Dutch word. Profit. It's not only financial profit; it's emotional profit as well. So profitability is bigger. Yeah. Viktor Frankl wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning, for Purpose. This guy survived 3 concentration camps during World War II. And he writes, everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing stays, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one attitude in a given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And that's what I'm saying. Your happiness, the way you want to work in the world, depends on the choices you make from your mindset, from your non-negotiables towards what's happening to you. If we go to leadership, leadership needs to know that they are not the ultimate professionals. The ultimate professionals are the people who are doing the job, who are in relation with the customers, with the clients. So leadership should step down, watch the people from behind instead of from above, and just stay there and ask one question: what can I do to support you? A lot of managers are telling you what you should do. But hey, you're the professional, so I don't need to tell them what you need to do, but I need to step back and say, how can I support you? What can I do for you to create better circumstances, better whatever? If you look at management and leadership that way, then engagement will go up, because then you are giving me that autonomy, that authority that I need. And that's what I love about English. If you write a book, you are an author and you have authority.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you, Paul. Hold that book up one more time. We're going to give you a little bit of a plug again. Everyone, his book, Profitability, Paul Ter Wal, I'm sure I'll put it in the show notes, but grab a copy of it. Going back to this thing about making choices, very, very interesting. My daughter's 26 years old. I have to get that right because she gets upset. and she's in university, just graduated in New Brunswick, other side of the country, environmental engineering. Really proud of her, Paul. She was working throughout university. She just joined this environmental company in New Brunswick, and they look after the wetlands and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the executive directors were going on mat leave, and they offered her the interim role. I mean, I'm blowing my mind going like, my daughter's 26, and look at her.
Yeah.
The one thing that I see she does so well is she has the type of personality where she can, people, my mom calls her an old soul. People just like her. So I really like what you said. I think if I listen to Paul's advice, everyone, Paul, if I make the right choices, and for example, if I'm in the workforce and I'm dealing with a toxic boss or somebody that I just can't connect to, I can make the choices. I can put all my emotional energy into that, right? And that'll affect everything in terms of how I engage. Or I can say, you know what? I'm just going to focus. I'm going to do my best. I can't change them. But then afterwards, I'm going to go and do what I love outside of work as well. I'm going to go find my joy and passion. Like, for example, walking the El Camino de Santiago trail.
Yeah.
Let's just digress for a minute as we're getting closer to the end of the show. I have a book here that I want to hold up. These are the maps for the Camino de Santiago. I read in your cool bio, and this is talking about you, the micro side. You've done it twice. What is that? Most people might not know what that is.
Well, the Camino, it's Spanish Camino for the way.
Yeah.
And it's a pilgrimage that you can start everywhere in the world, but it all ends in Santiago de Compostela. And Santiago means Saint Jacob. Saint Jacob the Elderly was one of the disciples of Christ who is buried in Santiago, in a city close to the coast of Spain and Portugal. They found his remains after 400 years with a small tablet on it. And it's now one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. And from the year 1000, people started walking as a pilgrim to pay tentage to what they did wrong. And if you walk to Santiago or Rome or Jerusalem, your sins were forgiven. So a lot of people, Catholics, walked from Europe over the Pyrenees, and you showed us the Camino France. I did it in 2014, which is 800 kilometers. It's about 650 miles. I walked it in 28 days, and it's letting go of all your frustration, all your stress. It's making your mind open again to what's happening in your inside world, unless you carry your iPad or iPhone the whole day with you. Don't do it. If you walk, leave it behind. Just by start. The best remedy against psychological and psychotic problems is walking. Walk an hour a day, because it will make you feel much better.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I have the second book here. I brought in the student because you had put in your notes about doing that. Paul Coelho's book, The Alchemist. I see you're nodding.
Yeah.
And you know, so basically, just so you know where I discovered the El Camino, and I'm tying it to employee engagement for a reason, because there's so many cool connections here between the external world, the macro and the micro. I have a friend, and he lives in Spain, and he was a business leader, and about a decade or so ago, he hit tough times, had a bit of a mental health setback, marital breakup. And everything you're talking about here could relate to what he went through, and about making choices, maybe making the wrong choices, maybe being in a place where he was working where there was an engagement and he couldn't deal with things. And he had a breakdown. Somebody said, read the book, The Alchemist. He did, and he told me that the next day he decided to go and do the El Camino, and he does it every year.
Yeah.
I would suggest, what do you think? That we should all find some source of activity that we can do outside of work that creates that feeling of, that brings out that feeling of joy and happiness. What do you think?
Well, I think it's almost a moral obligation for everybody because we are so focused on getting money, getting new stuff in our life that we forget that it's our inner life that is determining who we are and what we want to achieve. So all the research over the last 10, 15 years shows that pills, drugs can cure depression, but the best way to kill depression is by starting walking. And it's not running, it's just walking. But we need to put off that headset,
Yeah.
put down that phone, and just listen to nature, listen to the birds, listen to the wind, listen to the rain, and just enjoy the simple part of life because that's who we are. We are still in that early start of our life as human beings, that we were outside enjoying life. Nobody had a depression then. It's us by all the external poison that comes into our mind that we get a depression. Even if it's part of your DNA, which it is, but you can get rid of it by, like you did, train yourself,
Yes.
make your brain work again, relive what you need to relive.
I'm going to just tie that then to employee engagement. So tell us, is it fair to say that an employee, it's not just the organization you work for that's accountable for engagement, but your self-care, what you do for yourself is a part of that equation. Without that, it's difficult to be highly engaged in your work, right?
Yeah, yeah. There needs to be alignment between the core values of yourself and the
Yes.
non-negotiables of the organization. And on YouTube, I have a 90-second animation video in English about that story. That there needs to be alignment. So you don't need to have the same core values, but if there is struggle between the non-negotiables of an organization and your core values,
Yeah.
then you will be in big trouble.
Yeah, and then I remember saying to somebody that I was having this conversation where they're complaining all the time about their job, and I remember looking at them saying, why are you still there?" One of the
Exactly.
choices, Paul, that I made was I made a choice to try something different. Rather, and then the second when I made that choice, I went and did something different, but all those things I struggled with in the other place were still there.
Yeah.
That's when about a decade ago I went on my what I call the dark night of the soul, a search really deeper inside, and that's really where I discovered, particularly through my therapy, through my brain injury and mental health when I had depression, that it comes from inside. And when I started digging up all these things you're talking about our parents and your values and the choices you make, the power of our brain and being able to see the world, there's all that work you can do to change your life dramatically, make yourself much more engaged and happy. Everybody, Paul Ter Wal here, just giving us a great lesson today on engagement, but not just about work, but about engaging yourself to be happier. One more thing I wanted to just throw out there before we move to some wrap ups. Happiness makes money. Just to find that phrase.
Well, the point is a lot of people are looking for money because they think if they have a lot of money and they are successful, they will be happy. What research shows from the universities in the US, especially, that if you're happy, the chance for success is much higher. And with success comes the money. So we need to turn it around. You need to find inner peace. You need to find your core values and then create the life that you're looking for. And of course, it's not always easy. Let's be
Yes.
honest. We all have that difficulty, but looking only for money because then you will be happy, that's the wrong way.
Thank you for that. The COVID changed the world. We'll probably have you back to talk because there's so much more I want to ask you about that. But very quickly on that, the world changed. So now, like there are a lot of companies aren't having people in the office all the time. So has it really changed the whole leadership model of engaging people when you've got people on Zoom calls and you've got them sitting in their homes and sometimes in the office? Has that really changed the way you look at the world?
Well, for the first couple of years, 22, 23, I thought we need to get used to the part that people are away for 2 or 3 days. What I see now that it's changing, and look at the company called Zoom, who is selling Zoom. They want their people to be in the office at least 3 days a week. And that's about the belonging, the connection. You can't have connection with one another through Zoom or through StreamYard. You need to have that physical feeling. So yes, it's make life easier. Yes, it's better for a lot of people that they can work at home 1.5 or 2 days a week. No, we will get back to the office again, and maybe not 100% 5 days a week. But I see companies who say, oh, at least 3 days you are in the office. And you need to have that connection, that you walk around, drink a cup of coffee or tea with somebody you meet at the desk or whatever. That's all about connection. It's part of belonging to the tribe. And we forgot about it.
I think those are brilliant words, everyone. Check out the book, Profitability by Paul. I threw it up on the screen. Paul, you said a couple words there about our ancestors or tribe. It's interesting up front. I was talking about my new coloring book and the word Talanoa, which is an article about Pacific Islanders. We just have to go back to indigenous peoples of Fiji, Tonga, Samoa. They use Talanoa, which is sit in a circle, talk, talk, talk.
Yeah.
No positionality. Everybody gets to share. But you're passing down, when you're connecting to human beings, you're passing down, I think, values, stories of my dad, stories from the past. And it's that human connection. I also found, I was asking myself, and then I found out through research, why do I like you when I'm talking to you? And there's something that happens when I'm connecting to Paul. We're telling stories. And so, Paul, you're a good storyteller. But, Paul will say something that my brain goes, you know what? That thing you said, I feel that you're just like me in some way. And that releases a brain chemical called oxytocin. Yep. And that's the love chemical. You know what? We can learn just to hack the way we deal with people. Paul, I know you can comment on this, and hopefully it's favorable, but I pushed you hard. I said, when you asked to be on the show, I said, that's really nice about your bio, but tell me about your gut punches, your stories. That's what we learn from. Remember that?
Yeah.
And Paul wrote me back. And I do that to all my guests, and I've only had one person not come on. But it's what you said to me in those stories that makes me connect to you,
Yep.
humanizing you. And I think that's the part in leadership. After being a 30-year leader myself, Paul, I can tell you, I don't think leaders do a good job at humanizing themselves and connecting to people at that deep level.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot we can do to work with people like you and work on that part of ourselves. Hey, Paul, we're going to move to wrapping up now, and then I'll give you the last word. So I'm going to honor you with a couple things. I don't know if you knew this, but you're getting an award today. Maybe you didn't know that. Let's just see if we... All right. I'm going to hold this up to the camera. Do you know what a challenge coin is?
Yeah.
World War, I think it was World War I or II. Soldiers would carry them in their pocket to commit community. They'd have fun. If you didn't have your coin, well, you'd buy drinks. Today, they're used all over the world for community. In fact, in AA, my father had them, alcoholics.
Yeah.
So I wanted, when I started the show, to create something that I could honor what I call the 1%, people who will come on who have taken part of their life story and turned it into good to serve others. And there's deep purpose, but they also come on to tell their gut punches. The front of the coin is the show itself. They're hand-painted, crafted. The back is incredible how they did it, but it's the hero's journey narrative from Joseph Campbell's work, storytelling, which I think you'd love. So you'll be getting this, and honor you and welcome you to the Quiet Warrior Tribe. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I really love it.
You're welcome. Hopefully when you get it, I'd like you to take a picture somewhere meaningful in the Netherlands and send that back to me.
Absolutely.
The second thing I want to do here is honor you with four words. I call these leadership words. I'll just put my studio camera on the screen there. These I'm writing as I interview you. I don't tell you this. The first one is strategic. Strategic because what you're doing is strategic. Particularly that that acronym you told us, ABCP, I think it was.
Yeah.
Very, very strategic in the work you're doing. Two is empowering. I found talking to you that you're empowering me to be a better person. Thank you for that. Three is leader. You're a natural leader. There's no question about it. And the fourth one, I call it compassion. There is compassion, and I think we'll dedicate part of your story to your parents, your dad, to the values. I think that compassion, man, comes from you and comes through in the work that you're doing. On that note, I'm going to give it back to you to tell us where people can get a hold of you, anything you want to leave us with, and the answer to this question: when you're done with this world, what do you want it to look like?
Oh, I would love the world to be a place where we first look at ourselves and what we can change instead of looking at others and playing victim.
I love it. And where can we get a hold of you, your book, anything else you want to leave us with?
Well, you can go to my website and I have a free tool on it, and that's called the Engagement Benchmark tool.
Okay.
And it's on the main page of my website in English. And you can answer the 16 questions on autonomy, belonging, competence, and purpose. And you will find whether you or your organization is engaged, really engaged, and on what items you can work. If you want, we will send you the report just by filling in your email address, and you will get an English written report on your organization. It's free, and we're not going to track you down. That's not what we like. It's that people come to us and say, hey, what you're saying, could you help us out, please? And as a professional speaker, I love to travel, so I would love to come to any country in the world. And I've been to about 25, including Iran, where nobody wants to go there. And I thought we have so much complaint about people. I want to see it myself. And the big issue for me is they're all human beings, not that top 10, that military, religious, but the normal people are just people like you and me.
That's a teaching moment. Gosh, every time I want to let you go, you say something to hold me back here and keep this conversation. How dare you do that? But I'm going to say a couple more things to you, my friend. That Anthony Bourdain, I'm a home chef, and I grew up escaping things in my life, but found food. In my doctoral, I'm actually doing a critique on hospitality and food. Anthony Bourdain, as we know, or if you knew him from that, he was a chef. He died of it took his life. But I remember he did shows, and he went to some of these countries, and there's some of these shows where he said that. He said the media and everything I hear about, and then he goes and he spoke like you. He said, these are wonderful people. He says, you've got to see and experience this.
Yep.
The last part of my story about that I want to tell you is about public speaking. So I noted, and we'll put it in your bio, that you are a public speaker. People can call you and get a hold of you to talk. Great stuff. I belong to Toastmasters International, which is a public speaking program. And in my public speaking group, there were 2 or 3 people from Iran. Man, if you want to know how to understand the world, find a way into somewhere where there's people from other countries, completely different. For example, we complain about it being hot. In this group, a few months ago, there was one of the fellows who was from Iran who did a 7-minute talk on summer. And the theme of the meeting was summer. And he starts out, I hate summer. And we all just got on him saying, what are you talking about? You know what he said? He said, where I come from, it's 120 degrees every day. There's no shade, and it's like that all year round. Talk about worldview and perspective, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think maybe that's where we'll wrap up. If you want to know about the world, get a worldview, learn about employee engagement from an explorer and a great storyteller. Paul Ter Wal's your man. Get a hold of him at paulterwal.com. And everybody, live that life that you deserve, live the life you desire, and live the life with passion, as you hear from Paul here. And Paul, thank you so much. We'll have you back
Tom,
again, I'm sure.
okay, I loved it very much and love to be back.
Okay. Say I love you in your language, in Dutch.
Ik hou van je.
Okay. I'll go look that up because hopefully he didn't swear at me just now. All right. And thank you for being here, and we'll see you again, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
Okay, stand by. We're taking it offline, so we're still live streaming. Just